Today is all about fertilizing fruit trees. That's up next. Hello everyone, this is Dwayne with Edge of Nowhere Farm, and today is February 20th, 2021. We're here in February and we're in Arizona. It's just a beautiful day today. We're gonna be about 70 degrees, so perfect day and perfect timing for us to be fertilizing our fruiting trees and shrubs. Before we get started, I should probably talk a little bit about timing and when it comes to fertilizing fruit trees in particular, and the key times that you want to look for. If you're using a water-based fertilizer, you would do this more often. You would start about now and you would go through about to the end of the growing season. So you would do it on probably a monthly schedule. However, if you're using a granular or time release type fertilizer, you'll usually do that 3 times a year. In Arizona, those 3 times would be February, May, and September. The reason why we utilize those months is they're specific around our growing season. So some of the trees you're going to be seeing today are evergreen trees like citrus, which is behind me here, this loquat immediately next to me. But we also have other trees that are deciduous, and those are just now starting to break dormancy. February is a key month for us here, and maybe different for you based on where you're at. But the reason we use February as our first month is because we have trees that are just starting to break dormancy, and that's when you want to fertilize. Our harbinger, so to speak, on this farm as far as breaking dormancy is our Florida Prince peach trees. They've broken dormancy now for a couple weeks, so we're actually about 2 weeks behind. So typically we do this a little bit earlier, but as long as you're in that month of February for us here in Arizona, you're just fine. The next thing would be what type of fertilizer you're gonna use. The first type of fertilizer you're gonna see us using today is this conventional fertilizer that we get from Fertilize here in Arizona. This is their first class premium 15-15-15 fertilizer. We actually bought this fertilizer on the suggestion of Reed at RSI Growers. As you know, a lot of the trees that you're gonna be seeing today are actually his trees, and this is the fertilizer that he prefers. Now, I'm not gonna get into a discussion today about organic versus conventional fertilizers. I think you can make your own decision on what you want to do. We will use predominantly organic fertilizers here on the farm. However, I don't have a problem with utilizing a conventional fertilizer, particularly at a key time in a tree's growth. All the trees that you see here today have all been in the ground for less than a year. Keep that in mind. We also don't have much in the way of soil life that's built around these trees. So now, some of the concerns that I believe are valid when it comes to conventional fertilizers, especially with high nitrogen fertilizers like this, is it may actually have an issue with destroying some of that soil life. I have a tendency to agree with that. However, we have trees that don't have much in the way of soil life to begin with. Second thing is these are young, evergreen fruit trees that are just getting started. Some of these have just been in the ground here for a few months. So we want to make sure we give them a real strong shot of nitrogen in particular, and also some other key nutrients to help with establishing and developing root growth here, really going into this first year for them. So we're going to go ahead and show you where we're going to be utilizing this particular fertilizer and go ahead and get to fertilizing some of these trees. And we will pull these back. We're going to actually fertilize underneath the wood chips. We have irrigation rings that we know are approximately here around this tree, and for the most part the roots are just about out to this spot. So we're fertilizing out here to about where the tips or the growth ends or those feeder roots are on your tree. That will allow the nutrition to actually be in the right spot for the tree. So that's really key. I already know we watered this in about a week ago. It's still gonna be damp, so we're gonna have moist soil underneath here. And we have irrigation that we're gonna be running tonight. We wanna make sure that we come in and we water behind it to water in this fertilizer. This is our Big Jim loquat tree. We're gonna use this as the example for this specific fertilizer. This tree is an evergreen tree. It needs nitrogen basically all the time. In addition, we wanna make sure that this particular tree pushes out as much new branching as it possibly can before we hit summer, because summer is when your loquat trees really do start to struggle. So again, the reason we're using this conventional fertilizer with a high nitrogen content, we're driving as much growth as possible here over the next couple of months. So let's go ahead and get all of the wood chips pulled back so we're down to just about bare soil before we get our fertilizer placed. You can see down here, I'm inside my inside ring here, and I have nice moist soil here, or I should say wood chips breaking down into soil. So you can see that's nice and moist, and that's where my irrigation tonight is gonna be right up here next to the tree. And that's where I want to be fertilizing. This is actually about 1/4 cup, so it doesn't take a whole lot because it is pretty strong. And I do have gloves on now that I'm actually kind of digging in here. I don't want to get too much of this on my hands. So I've got about 1/4 cup there, and I'm gonna evenly sprinkle this around that drip line, right into the wood chips that are gonna water in tonight. So now I have a little extra, so I've got it pretty evenly spaced. Now I know my water actually comes in right here, so I'm gonna have a tremendous amount of water accumulation right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit extra here in the front. And the way we design these is water will pool in the back a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of extra there in the back. All right, just like that. Of course, the only thing left to do is put the wood chips back on here. Very simple, very easy, especially with this type of granular fertilizer. This tree is now fertilized until we hit May. All right, we've got a few more shrubs back here we need to do the exact same thing with. Again, these are all of our evergreen trees here in this section of the farm, and we will be utilizing this conventional fertilizer with the high nitrogen content for all of these evergreens. Just wrapped up with our kumquat trees right here next to our pasture and our chicken run, and I think all of our evergreens are ready until May. Okay, we're done with conventional fertilizer. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the next type of fertilizer we're gonna use, and this is actually our go forward fertilizer. This is basically what we're gonna be using as we are able to produce more here on this farm. This here is actually raw chicken manure. Some of it's been composting down for about a year now. We'll be pulling the wood chips back, mixing this in with the wood chips that will be in the irrigation rings, and this will continue to break down over time and feed the soil life as well as feeding the tree. We will be taking this and putting it onto our ever-bearing mulberry trees, which you'll see here. We have these growing as a hedge up against our chicken coop and run. We've already used manure type fertilizers on there in the past, and we're gonna go ahead and continue to do that now. One thing I know, we originally started our soil production right here where those trees are. When we first brought trees onto the farm, we had wood chips on the ground and a tremendous amount of worm activity I know is going on in the ground there. I definitely don't want to use that conventional fertilizer and take the chance of destroying that soil life and bacteria that we have down in there, so we will be utilizing this particular source. Now, we do have one other type of manure that we're going to be utilizing as well. That's pig manure, although we're not doing that this year. That's just starting to establish mixed with wood chips, but you'll see that here once we roll around to May. The last type of fertilizer we're going to be utilizing today are the Bioflora Crumbles. So this is basically a composted chicken manure. There's some other ingredients in there as well. This is their 665 formula. We get this particular bag from Greg Peterson and the Urban Farm Fruit Tree Program. It is our preferred fertilizer as far as organic natural fertilizers here in Arizona. He has the 50-pound bags when he has them available here in the wintertime, and that really is your most cost-effective way to get this. We have found it at Summer Winds as well in smaller containers. We're gonna be utilizing about a cup per tree on these smaller trees, so a little bit more material. It is all natural, which is great. And again, if we didn't have the option of manure here on the farm, this is definitely our go-to fertilizer. We have a lot of young trees here, and a question that comes up is, when do I first start fertilizing trees? Now, we do very light fertilization when we plant a tree. It's usually a liquid fertilizer, and more specifically, fish emulsion. Now with Reed, his trees, a lot of these are his trees. He prefers that his newly planted trees go in the ground with that Fertizona fertilizer. So we do use that when we first plant those potted trees. Otherwise, we want to give them about 6 months or so we would skip a regular fertilizing schedule with those newly planted trees. Once they've been in the ground, you follow that normal fertilizing schedule. Most of these trees on this side of the farm have all been in the ground for just under a year. They'll all be receiving fertilizer. Again, any newly planted trees, we have several, we're skipping. Same process, we're gonna be pulling the wood chips back and sprinkling these around that drip line, again, where all those feeder roots are. So you get an idea of what this fertilizer looks like. It's a real mix of larger crumbles like that and much smaller, almost like dirt, but it's just beautiful, just almost like lava or something, this dark black, beautiful color. And then when you smell it, it smells really good too. It doesn't have that real strong fertilizer nitrogen kind of smell. Very good smell to it as well, which I really like, just a natural fertilizer. Okay, as Lori looks that way, you're gonna see we got a lot more work to do. One last thing I want to show you, this is our potted golden Dorset apple tree. You can see it's in full bloom here, so we're definitely a little late on getting the first fertilization done on this tree, but in the end, better late than never. So potted trees are a little unique. Now, there is a school of thought that maybe liquid fertilizers are better more often with a tree like this. However, I'm more of the line of thought that I can use a natural crumble that's not too high in nitrogen and things like that that might burn these shallow roots, and it'll time release for me, especially on a tree that I don't want to have to water all the time and fertilize all the time. I'd like to be able to just water it once or twice a week, maybe 3 times in the summertime, and call it as far as fertilization. Plus, I want to stay on the same schedule. It just keeps us together and makes sure that we get everything fertilized with 160 trees to fertilize. So all we do with this is just simply the same thing. We lightly pull back the mulch. We do have a wood chip mulch in here. We'll be using the Bioflora Crumbles to go ahead and get these in here. Now, we will water this in right now to make sure that we get this nice and soaked in, because this pot is not yet on irrigation. That's gonna do it for our first round of fertilizing here in 2021. We showed you a couple different types of fertilizers today. Not gonna give you a strong opinion one way or another. We lean more towards the natural. However, choose one, and the key is timing. Make sure you're consistent, you get on a schedule and you stick to it, because you don't wanna miss it. Obviously for us here in Arizona, it's easy to remember. We remember by holiday. So for us, it's Valentine's Day, Memorial Day, and Labor Day, February, May, and September. Easy to remember. But the key is, no matter which one you choose, just make sure you stay consistent and you fertilize those trees, because in the end, they're gonna be more fruitful for you. So just wanna thank you for joining us today. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comment section down below. And our Amazon shop, I'll leave a link down in the description. That's a free, painless way to help support the channel. If you start with that link, it doesn't matter what you buy, you help to support us here. So just wanna thank you for joining us today and remind you, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere, so can you. But this is their 665 formula. Yep.